Late at night in my oil-stained coveralls, I pressed my ear against the kitchen door and heard my wife Denise and daughter Megan tearing me apart like vultures on roadkill. "Dad's so cheap. He'd price-check the casket at his own funeral," Megan laughed, her voice dripping with the same contempt I'd been hearing for months. No wonder Mom found someone who actually lives a little. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Denise's response made me freeze. Harold's idea of romance is a 2-for-1 coupon at Applebee's. Lance actually knows how to treat a woman. Lance. The wedding DJ I'd hired for Megan's upcoming wedding. The same sleazy bastard who'd been charging me premium rates while apparently getting premium benefits from my wife. I stood there in my own kitchen, listening to my family discuss my funeral arrangements and my wife's affair with the casual indifference of people ordering pizza. If I'm such a burden, I thought, maybe I'll just vanish. Spoiler alert, I won't. My name is Harold Mitchell, and I'm 62 years old. I spent 35 years building a contracting business from nothing in this Rust Belt town of Dunfield, Ohio. I poured concrete, framed houses, and saved every penny so my family could live comfortably. Now I'm retired, and apparently I'm also the town joke. Denise runs a high-end wedding planning business these days. She's 58, perfectly manicured, and treats me like a stain on her designer furniture. Our daughter Megan, 28 and getting married next month, has inherited her mother's talent for making me feel invisible. The kitchen conversation continued, each word a knife twist. "The wedding badge thing was genius, Mom," Megan said. "Limited access guest, perfect." "I couldn't have him mingling with the real guests," Denise replied. "Can you imagine Harold trying to make small talk with the Pemberton family? He'd probably ask them about their septic system." They both laughed. I'd heard enough. I pushed through the door like I'd just come in from the garage. "Evening, ladies. What's so funny?" Denise didn't even flinch. "Oh, Harold, we were just discussing the final arrangements for Megan's wedding." "Arrangements," I repeated, letting the word hang in the air like smoke. "Anything I should know about?" Megan exchanged a look with her mother. "Dad, we've been over this. You're invited, of course, but Mom thinks it would be better if you kept a low profile. You know, let the professionals handle the social aspects." "Professionals," I said. "Like Lance the DJ?" Denise's face tightened almost imperceptibly. "Lance is very good at what he does." "I bet he is." I grabbed a beer from the fridge, noting how they both watched me like I was a wild animal who might do something unpredictable. "So what's this about a badge?" "It's nothing," Megan said quickly. "Just a way to organize the different groups at the wedding." "Different groups," I repeated. "And I'm in which group exactly?" Denise sighed like I was asking her to explain quantum physics to a toddler. "You'll have a limited access guest badge. It just means you won't need to worry about all the formal reception duties. You can relax and enjoy yourself." The way she said it, you'd think she was doing me a favor. Like being excluded from my own daughter's wedding was some kind of gift. "How thoughtful," I said. "And where exactly will I be relaxing?" Another look between mother and daughter. These two had been planning my humiliation with military precision. "There's a lovely table near the kitchen," Denise said. "Very convenient." "To what? The dishwasher?" "Dad, don't be dramatic," Megan snapped. "It's my wedding day. Can you please just go along with things for once?" For once. Like I'd been causing problems instead of paying for everything. I took a long pull of beer and studied my family. Denise in her expensive silk blouse, Megan in her designer jeans. Both of them looking at me like I was something they'd scrape off their shoes. "Sure, sweetheart," I said finally. "Whatever makes you happy." They both relaxed, thinking they'd won. They had no idea I was just getting started. The next morning, I drove to Sal's boxing gym on the east side of town. The place smelled like sweat, leather, and honest work. Everything my house didn't anymore. Sal Martinez was 68, built like a fire hydrant, and had been coaching fighters since before I started my business. He was also an ex-cop who knew where all the bodies were buried in Dunfield. "You look like hell, Harold," Sal said as I walked in. He was wrapping the hands of a young fighter who couldn't have been more than 20. "What's eating you?" I told him about the badge, the kitchen conversation, and Lance the DJ. Sal listened without interrupting, occasionally grunting or shaking his head. "You're the punchline at every bar in Dunfield," Sal said when I finished. "That badge at the wedding? Don't take it lying down." "What am I supposed to do? It's Megan's wedding." "Megan's wedding that you're paying for," Sal pointed out. "How much this circus costing you?" $43,000, not counting the DJ. Sal whistled low. 43 grand to sit by the kitchen with a badge that says you don't belong. Harold, you got more patience than Job." The young fighter finished his workout and left. Sal and I were alone in the gym, surrounded by heavy bags and the ghosts of old fights. "You want some advice?" Sal asked. "Shoot." "Find out exactly what your wife and this Lance character are up to? Get proof? Then decide what you want to do about it?" "I already know what they're doing." "You know they're screwing around. You don't know the details. Trust me, Harold. The details matter. They always matter." I left the gym with a plan forming in my head. If Denise wanted to play games, I'd show her what a real game looked like. That evening, I waited until Denise left for her weekly book club, which I now suspected involved more than discussing literature. I went through her home office with the methodical thoroughness of a man who'd spent decades reading blueprints and contracts. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. Receipts from the Lakeside Manor, Dunfield's only luxury hotel, dinner charges, room service, champagne, all on dates when Denise claimed to be working late or visiting her sister in Toledo, text messages on her iPad that she'd forgotten to delete, messages that would make a sailor blush, all from L with a heart emoji. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Harold's so clueless, it's almost sad. The wedding will be perfect. After that, we can stop pretending. Your husband is pathetic. You deserve so much better." I sat in her chair, surrounded by evidence of my wife's betrayal, and felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. It wasn't heartbreak. That would come later. It was rage, pure and simple. My phone buzzed. A text from Denise. "Book club running late. Don't wait up." I texted back, "No problem. Enjoy your reading." Then I drove to the Lakeside Manor. The Lakeside Manor sat on the shore of Lake Erie like a wedding cake someone had forgotten to eat. It was the kind of place Denise loved, all marble and crystal and waiters who called you "sir" even when they were looking down their noses at you. I parked my beat-up pickup between a BMW and a Mercedes, feeling like a turd in a punch bowl. The valet looked at my truck like it might be contagious, but I tipped him $20 and told him to park it somewhere special. The lobby was all soft lighting and classical music. I felt underdressed in my jeans and work shirt, but I walked to the bar like I owned the place. Sometimes confidence is just stubbornness wearing a tie. "What can I get you?" the bartender asked. He was young, probably Megan's age, with the kind of perfect hair that cost more than my monthly utilities. "Beer, whatever's on tap." I settled onto a bar stool and surveyed the room. "Nice place. You get a lot of regulars?" "Some," he said, sliding a glass across the bar. "Mostly business travelers and couples looking for a romantic getaway." "Couples," I repeated. "Married couples?" He gave me a look that said he knew exactly what I was fishing for. "I don't really pay attention to the guest registry, if you know what I mean." I pulled out my phone and showed him a picture of Denise and Lance from Megan's engagement party. "Ever see these two together?" The bartender studied the photo for a long moment. "You a cop?" "Husband." "Ah." He handed back the phone. "Yeah, they come in maybe once a week. Always get the same suite. Always order champagne. She tips well. How long has this been going on? Maybe 6 months? They started coming in around Christmas. 6 months. While I was planning our retirement, Denise was planning her exit strategy. Thanks, I said, finishing my beer. For what it's worth, the bartender said as I stood to leave. She doesn't seem happy, even when she's with him. Like she's going through the motions, you know. I left him a $20 tip and walked back to my truck. The valet had parked it in the far corner of the lot, probably hoping it wouldn't contaminate the luxury vehicles. As I walked across the asphalt, I heard familiar laughter coming from the hotel's side entrance. Denise and Lance emerged from a service elevator, probably thinking they were being discreet. She looked radiant in a way I hadn't seen in years. He looked like exactly what he was, a middle-aged man trying too hard to be young and cool. Lance was tall and lean, with silver hair and the kind of tan that came from a bottle. He wore expensive jeans and a silk shirt that probably cost more than most people's car payments. His DJ business, Elite Entertainment, apparently paid well enough for designer clothes and hotel suites. They walked to his van, a customized vehicle with Elite Entertainment painted on the sides in gold letters. The back was full of sound equipment, lights, and speakers. This was the same van that would be at Megan's wedding, providing the soundtrack to my public humiliation. I crouched behind a Lexus and watched them say goodbye. It was like watching a movie I didn't want to see but couldn't turn off. They kissed like teenagers, all hands and breathless whispers. Denise pressed herself against him like she was trying to crawl inside his skin. I wish we didn't have to sneak around, she said. Soon, Lance replied. After the wedding, everything changes. Harold will be history. What if he fights the divorce? Let him. You've got the business, the house, the connections. He's got what? A garage full of rusty tools? They laughed together at my expense. I felt my hands clench into fists, but I stayed hidden. This wasn't the time for confrontation. This was reconnaissance. Lance helped Denise into her car, a white Lexus that I'd bought her for their anniversary 2 years ago. She drove away first, probably heading home to pretend she'd been discussing book club selections. Lance spent a few more minutes checking his equipment, then climbed into the driver's seat of his van. I waited until he pulled out of the parking lot, then followed at a distance. Lance lived in a condo complex on the wealthy side of town, the kind of place with names like Willowbrook Estates and Heritage Village. His building was called Lakewood Commons, which was ironic since there wasn't a lake or woods anywhere nearby, just manicured lawns and imported trees that looked like they'd been arranged by a committee. I parked across the street and watched him carry his equipment into the building. He moved with the easy confidence of a man who thought he had the world by the tail. Tomorrow, I decided, I'd find out just how secure his grip really was. The next morning, I called my old friend Pete Morrison. Pete ran a private investigation service out of a strip mall office between a nail salon and a Chinese restaurant. We'd known each other since high school, back when we both thought we'd conquer the world instead of just surviving it. Harold Mitchell, Pete said when I walked into his office, I heard you were living the retired life. What brings you to my humble establishment? I told him about Denise and Lance, the hotel receipts, and the overheard conversations. Pete listened like the professional he was, taking notes and asking the right questions. You want me to document the affair? He asked. I want you to find out everything about Lance Crawford, his business, his finances, his history, everything. That'll cost you. How much? $2,000, plus expenses. I wrote him a check on the spot. How long? Give me a week, maybe less if he's as sloppy as most cheaters. He's sloppy, I said. They both are. They think I'm too stupid to notice. Pete smiled. That's their first mistake. I left his office feeling like I'd finally started fighting back instead of just taking punches. For the first time in months, I had something to look forward to. That afternoon, I went back to Sal's gym. The old coach took one look at my face and nodded approvingly. "You look different," he said, "less like a whipped dog." "I'm done being the victim," I told him. "Time to be the villain." "About damn time. What's the plan?" "I'm going to destroy them both. Systematically, methodically, and completely legally." Sal grinned. "Now you're talking my language." Pete Morrison called me 3 days later with information that made me freeze and my brain start calculating revenge. "Your boy Lance is living on borrowed time and borrowed money," Pete said over coffee at Murphy's Diner, a greasy spoon that served as Dunfield's unofficial information exchange. Elite entertainment is leveraged to the hilt. He owes money to equipment suppliers, venue owners, and at least 3 ex-wives. 3 ex-wives? Yeah, and none of them have nice things to say about him. Wife number 2, Jennifer, lives right here in Toledo. Says Lance is a chronic cheater who promises the moon and delivers green cheese. Pete slid a manila folder across the table. "It gets better. He's been using fake references to book high-end gigs, including your daughter's wedding. Half his equipment is rented, not owned. And he's got a gambling problem that would make a casino owner blush." I opened the folder and found a treasure trove of Lance's dirty laundry. Unpaid bills, angry letters from creditors, court documents from his various divorces. The man my wife thought was her ticket to the good life was actually a walking financial disaster. "There's more," Pete continued. "I talked to some people in the wedding industry. Lance has a reputation for sleeping with his clients. Married women, mostly. He targets wives who feel neglected, promises them excitement, then moves on when things get complicated. So Denise isn't special. She's just another mark." "Looks that way. But here's the kicker. Word is he's planning something big after your daughter's wedding. Something that involves a lot of money and a quick exit from town." I felt pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. He's going to rob the wedding. Or convince your wife to clean out your accounts and run away with him. Either way, you're the one who gets screwed. I closed the folder and finished my coffee. Not if I screw them first. That evening, I put Pete's information to good use. I called Jennifer Crawford, Lance's second ex-wife, and arranged to meet her for drinks. She was the attractive woman in her 40s who worked as a nurse at Toledo General Hospital. More importantly, she hated Lance with the passion of someone who'd learned his true nature the hard way. "Lance is a parasite," Jennifer told me over wine at a quiet restaurant near the hospital. "He finds successful women, charms them, bleeds them dry, then disappears. I lost my house, my savings, and almost my sanity before I figured out his game." "How does he do it?" "He's good at reading people. He finds their weaknesses and exploits them. Lonely housewives, successful businesswomen who feel unappreciated, widows with insurance money. He's got a different approach for each type." "What type is my wife?" Jennifer studied me for a moment. "The successful woman who feels like her husband doesn't appreciate her accomplishments. Lance probably tells her she's too good for small-town life, that she deserves better than a blue-collar husband who doesn't understand her sophistication." She was right. That was exactly what Lance would say, and exactly what Denise would want to hear. "What's his end game?" I asked. "He'll push her to liquidate assets, maybe take out loans against the business. Then he'll convince her to run away with him to start fresh somewhere else. By the time she realizes he's cleaned her out, he'll be long gone." "Has he done this before?" "At least twice that I know of. There's a woman in Cleveland who lost everything, and another in Pittsburgh who almost eliminated herself when she realized what he'd done to her." I felt sick thinking about Denise falling for the same con that had destroyed other women. Despite everything, I didn't want to see her ruined. I just wanted her to stop treating me like garbage. "There's something else you should know," Jennifer said. "Lance has a violent streak. If he feels cornered or threatened, he can get physical. Be careful." I thanked Jennifer for the warning and drove home, my head spinning with plans and possibilities. Denise was already in bed when I got there, probably exhausted from another book club meeting. I sat in my garage workshop until almost dawn, surrounded by tools and half-finished projects, planning my counterattack. The next morning, I started making phone calls. First, I called the bank and put a hold on our joint accounts. Nothing illegal, just a request to be notified before any large withdrawals or transfers. Then I called our investment advisor and did the same thing with our retirement funds. Next, I contacted 3 of Lance's creditors and anonymously tipped them off about his upcoming payday at Megan's wedding. I didn't tell them to do anything specific, just suggested they might want to keep an eye on their delinquent client. Finally, I called the Lakeside Manor and made a reservation for the night of Megan's bachelor party. Not for myself, for Lance Crawford and his business associate, Carrie Walsh. Carrie Walsh was Denise's best friend and business partner, a perfectly preserved 55-year-old who'd been divorced 3 times and had opinions about everything. She was also, according to Pete's investigation, the one who'd introduced Denise to Lance. I had a feeling Carrie's involvement in this mess went deeper than friendship. That afternoon, I drove to Megan's apartment to have a conversation I'd been dreading. My daughter lived in a trendy complex near the university, the kind of place where young professionals pretended they were still in college. Her apartment was decorated with the careful casualness of someone who'd watched too many home improvement shows. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Megan asked when she opened the door. She was wearing yoga pants and an Ohio State sweatshirt, looking more like the little girl I remembered than the cold young woman she'd become. "I wanted to talk to you about the wedding," I said. She sighed and let me in. "If this is about the seating arrangement again, Mom already explained. It's not about the seating arrangement, it's about Lance." Megan's face went carefully blank. "What about Lance?" "You know he's sleeping with your mother, don't you?" For a moment, I thought she might deny it. Then her shoulders sagged and she collapsed onto her couch like a marionette with cut strings. "I've suspected for a while," she admitted, "but I didn't want to believe it." "Why didn't you tell me?" "What was I supposed to say? Hey, Dad, I think Mom's cheating on you with the DJ? I hoped I was wrong. I hoped it would just go away." I sat down beside her, feeling older than my 62 years. "Sweetheart, it's not going away. If anything, it's getting worse." Megan started crying, not the dramatic tears of a spoiled princess, but the quiet sobs of a young woman who'd watched her family fall apart and felt powerless to stop it. "I'm sorry about the badge thing," she whispered, "and the seating. I just wanted everything to be perfect, and Mom said you'd be more comfortable. Your mother said a lot of things. Most of them were lies designed to push me out of the picture. What are you going to do?" I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw the scared little girl who used to crawl into my lap when thunderstorms kept her awake. "I'm going to fix this," I said. "But I need you to trust me, even when things get ugly." "How ugly?" "Very ugly. Your mother and Lance are planning to steal everything we have and disappear together. I can't let that happen." Megan wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "What do you need me to do?" "Just stay out of the way, and remember that whatever happens, I love you more than life itself." She hugged me then, the first real affection she'd shown me in months. "I love you too, Dad. I'm sorry I forgot that for a while." I left Megan's apartment feeling like I'd won the first battle in a war I was determined not to lose. 2 days before Megan's wedding, I put my plan into motion. It started with a phone call to Lance's biggest creditor, a sound equipment company in Cleveland that he owed $37,000. "Mr. Crawford has been very creative with his payment schedule," the collections manager told me. "We've been trying to repossess our equipment for months, but he keeps moving it around. What if I told you exactly where to find it on Saturday night? I'd say you're a very helpful citizen. The equipment will be at the Dunfield Community Center from 6 p.m. to midnight. Big wedding reception, hard to miss." I hung up and made similar calls to 2 other creditors. By Saturday evening, Lance would have more company than he expected. Next, I drove to the community center to have a conversation with the catering manager. The Dunfield Community Center was a converted high school gymnasium that tried to pass itself off as an elegant venue with strategic lighting and draped fabric. It was the kind of place that looked good in photographs but couldn't hide its institutional bones. "Mr. Mitchell," the catering manager said when I found her setting up tables, "everything looks wonderful for tomorrow. Your daughter's going to have a beautiful wedding." "I'm sure she will," I said. "I just wanted to confirm one detail about the seating arrangements." "Of course. What can I help you with?" "My wife mentioned something about a special table for limited access guests. I wanted to make sure I knew where that was." The woman looked uncomfortable. "Well, there is one table that's less centrally located, near the kitchen entrance. Mrs. Mitchell said it was for guests who preferred a quieter experience." "Guests who preferred it, or guests she preferred to hide?" The catering manager didn't answer, but her expression told me everything I needed to know. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, pulling out an envelope. "This contains the final payment for the catering, $15,000 in cash. You can have it right now, or you can wait for my wife to write you a check that might bounce." She took the envelope without hesitation. "In exchange, I want you to make one small change to the seating arrangement. Put me at the head table right next to the microphone, and give me 5 minutes alone with the sound system before the reception starts." "Mr. Mitchell, I don't think—" "Lady, I'm the one paying for this circus. I think I've earned the right to make a toast to my daughter." She agreed, probably because $15,000 in cash was worth more than Denise's approval. That evening, I met with Sal at the gym for what he called final preparations. The old coach had assembled a small crew of his most trusted fighters, guys who'd grown up in Dunfield's rough neighborhoods and understood the concept of loyalty. "You sure about this, Harold?" Sal asked as we watched his boys work the heavy bags. "Once you pull this trigger, there's no going back." "I'm sure. Lance thinks he's dealing with a stupid old man who'll just give up and stay quiet. Time to show him what a stupid old man can do when he's got nothing left to lose." "And your wife?" "Denise made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences." Sal nodded. "What do you need from us?" "Just be at the community center tomorrow night, and bring cameras. I want everything documented." Friday night was Megan's bachelor party, a small gathering at a downtown bar that Denise had organized. I wasn't invited, of course, but I had other plans. While my wife was playing the role of mother of the bride, I was putting the final pieces of my trap into place. I drove to Lance's condo complex and found his van in the parking lot. The back doors were unlocked. Apparently, Elite Entertainment wasn't worried about theft in this upscale neighborhood. I spent 20 minutes installing a small GPS tracker under the dashboard and planting a voice recorder in the equipment compartment. Then I went home and called the Lakeside Manor. "I'd like to confirm a reservation for tonight," I told the desk clerk. "Lance Crawford and Carrie Walsh." "Let me check." "Yes, sir. Suite 412. They checked in about an hour ago." Perfect. While Denise was at the bachelor party, her lover and best friend were having their own private celebration. I wondered if Denise knew about Lance and Carrie's arrangement, or if she was just another mark in their long-term con game. I drove to the hotel and waited in the parking lot until almost midnight. When Lance and Carrie finally emerged from the building, they looked like co-conspirators who'd just finalized a major business deal. They kissed goodbye, not with passion, but with the satisfied efficiency of partners who'd successfully completed a project. I followed Carrie to her house in Dunfield's historic district, a restored Victorian that probably cost more than most people made in 5 years. She lived alone, surrounded by antiques and the accumulated wealth of her 3 divorce settlements. The next morning, Megan's wedding day, I woke up feeling calmer than I had in months. Everything was in place. All I had to do was show up and watch my enemies destroy themselves. Denise was already gone when I got out of bed, probably handling last-minute wedding preparations. She'd left me a note on the kitchen counter. "Harold, please try to look presentable today. And remember, limited mingling at the reception. Love, D." Love, D. like we were business associates instead of a married couple. I showered, shaved, and put on my best suit, a charcoal gray number I'd bought for Megan's college graduation. In the mirror, I looked like exactly what I was, a working-class man trying to dress up for his daughter's wedding. But I also looked like something else, a man who'd finally stopped apologizing for who he was. The wedding ceremony was scheduled for 4 p.m., with the reception to follow immediately. I arrived at the community center at 3:30 and found controlled chaos. Florists were arranging centerpieces, caterers were setting up the kitchen, and Denise was directing traffic like a general preparing for battle. She looked stunning in a navy blue dress that probably cost more than my truck payment. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless, her smile bright enough to power the building. She was in her element, commanding respect and admiration from everyone around her. Everyone except me. "Harold," she said when she noticed me standing near the entrance. "You're early. Wanted to make sure everything was perfect for our daughter." "How thoughtful. Your table is over there near the kitchen. I had them put a nice centerpiece on it." I looked where she was pointing and saw a small round table tucked into a corner, practically hidden behind a pillar. 2 place settings, a wilted flower arrangement, and a clear view of the dishwashing station. "Looks cozy," I said. "I thought you'd appreciate the privacy, less pressure to make small talk." "Very considerate. Where's your table?" "I'm at the head table, of course, with Megan and the wedding party." "Of course. And Lance?" "The DJ will be working, Harold. He doesn't get a table." But I knew Lance would be eating well that night, just not the food the caterers were preparing. At exactly 4 o'clock, I walked my daughter down the aisle and gave her away to a young man who seemed decent enough, despite his questionable taste in in-laws. Megan looked beautiful in her wedding dress, radiant with happiness and hope for the future. For a moment, I forgot about revenge and betrayal and focused on the simple joy of watching my little girl become a wife. This was what mattered: family, love, commitment. Everything Denise had thrown away for a few months of excitement with a con man. The ceremony was brief and tasteful. Megan and her new husband exchanged vows that actually meant something, unlike the empty promises Denise and I had made 30 years ago. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, I felt genuinely happy for the first time in months. Then, the reception started, and it was time for the real show to begin. The community center transformed as evening fell. Soft lighting hid the gymnasium's harsh angles, draped fabric covered the institutional walls, and Lance's sound system filled the space with elegant music. For a few minutes, it actually looked like the elegant venue Denise had promised. I found my assigned table in the corner and sat down to wait. The other chair remained empty. Apparently, I was such a social pariah that they couldn't even find me a table companion. Fine by me. I had a perfect view of the head table where Denise held court like a queen, and an even better view of Lance's DJ station near the dance floor. Lance looked every inch the successful businessman in his tailored tuxedo. His equipment was set up with military precision, lights flashing in perfect synchronization with the music. He worked the crowd like a professional, reading the room and adjusting his playlist to match the mood. He was good at his job, I had to admit. Too bad he was about to lose everything. At 7:30, I excused myself and walked to the men's room. On the way, I stopped by the catering manager and reminded her of our arrangement. She nodded nervously and handed me a wireless microphone. 5 minutes, she whispered. That's all I can give you. I slipped into the storage room behind Lance's equipment setup and connected the microphone to his main soundboard. It took less than 2 minutes to bypass his controls and link directly to the speakers. When I was ready to talk, everyone in the building would hear me whether Lance wanted them to or not. Back at my table, I ordered a whiskey and settled in to watch the show. Megan and her husband had their first dance to a song that Lance played flawlessly. The wedding party joined them for the second song, including Denise and her escort, Carrie's ex-husband, a distinguished gentleman who had no idea his dance partner was planning to rob him blind. At 8 o'clock, the first creditor arrived. I watched through the windows as a tow truck pulled into the parking lot, followed by two men in suits. They walked around Lance's van like sharks circling prey, checking serial numbers and making notes on clipboards. Lance noticed them too. I saw him glance toward the windows, his confident smile faltering for just a moment. He said something to his assistant, a college kid who helped carry equipment and looked terrified of making mistakes. The second creditor arrived 10 minutes later, then the third. By 8:30, Lance's van was surrounded by repo men and process servers. I could see him sweating under the lights, trying to maintain his professional demeanor while his world collapsed outside. That's when I stood up and activated the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," my voice boomed through the speakers, cutting through Lance's music like a knife through silk. "If I could have your attention for just a moment." The room fell silent. Every head turned toward me, including Denise's. Her face went white when she realized what was happening. "My name is Harold Mitchell, and I'm Megan's father. I know I'm supposed to be sitting quietly in the corner, but I have a few things I'd like to share with you all." Lance frantically tried to cut my microphone feed, but I'd bypassed his controls. His equipment was working against him now. "First, I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate my daughter's wedding. Megan looks beautiful tonight, and I couldn't be prouder of the woman she's become." Scattered applause. Megan looked confused but not alarmed. Yet. "I also want to thank my wife, Denise, for planning such a wonderful event. She's worked very hard to make everything perfect, including arranging for me to have this lovely table near the kitchen. Very thoughtful of her." A few nervous chuckles from the crowd. Denise was trying to signal the catering manager, but the woman was nowhere to be found. "Now, I know some of you have heard rumors about trouble in my marriage. Small towns love their gossip, don't they? Well, I'm here to set the record straight." The room was silent now. Even the kitchen staff had stopped working to listen. "It's true that my wife has been having an affair with our DJ, Lance Crawford, the same man we hired to provide music for our daughter's wedding. I have to admit, that takes a special kind of nerve." Gasps and whispers rippled through the crowd. Denise stood up from the head table, her face a mask of fury and panic. "Harold, stop this right now." "Sit down, Denise, I'm not finished." Lance was moving toward me now, pushing through the crowd with murder in his eyes. But Sal's boys were already in position, blocking his path with the casual efficiency of men who'd handled bigger problems than a panicked DJ. "You see, Lance isn't just sleeping with my wife. He's also planning to rob her blind and disappear with her money, along with her best friend Carrie, who's been helping plan this little con game from the beginning." All eyes turned to Carrie, who looked like she wanted to crawl under a table. Her face had gone from pale to green in the space of 30 seconds. "Don't believe me? Ask Lance why there are 3 tow trucks in the parking lot ready to repossess his equipment. Ask him about his gambling debts, his 3 ex-wives, and his history of targeting wealthy women for financial fraud." Lance broke free from the crowd and lunged toward me, but Sal stepped into his path like a human wall. The old coach might have been 68, but he'd lost none of his intimidation factor. "I wouldn't," Sal said quietly. Lance backed away, his face twisted with rage and desperation. "This is all lies," he shouted. "This man is having a mental breakdown. He's been stalking me, harassing my business." "Your business?" I laughed, and the sound echoed through the speakers like thunder. "Lance, your business is about to be repossessed by 3 different creditors, along with your van, your equipment, and probably your fancy condo." As if on cue, one of the repo men appeared in the doorway and waved at Lance. "Mr. Crawford, we need to talk to you about some overdue payments." The crowd turned to stare at Lance like he was an exhibit in a zoo. His carefully constructed facade crumbled in real time, revealing the desperate con man underneath. "And Denise," I continued, turning to face my wife, "my dear, devoted wife, who's been planning to clean out our bank accounts and run away with this pathetic excuse for a gigolo. Did you really think I was too stupid to notice? Denise's composure finally cracked. You bastard! You've ruined everything. I've ruined everything? Lady, you're the one who decided to screw the help and steal from your own family. The crowd was eating it up now, their shock giving way to fascination. This was better than any soap opera, and it was happening right in front of them. But here's the beautiful part, I said, warming to my theme. Lance was never planning to run away with you, Denise. He was planning to run away with Carrie. They've been partners in this scam from the beginning. You weren't his lover. You were just another mark. Denise spun to face Carrie, her eyes blazing with betrayal and fury. Is that true? Carrie looked like she wanted to disappear, but there was nowhere to run. Denise, I can explain. Explain what? That you've been setting me up? That you introduced me to Lance so he could rob me? It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Denise slapped Carrie across the face with a sound like a gunshot. The crowd gasped and pressed closer. Lance tried to slip away during the commotion, but the repo men were waiting for him at every exit. He was trapped in a room full of people who now knew exactly what he was. Ladies and gentlemen, I said into the microphone, I want you all to remember this moment. Remember what happens when people think they can lie, cheat, and steal without consequences. Remember that sometimes the old dog has a few tricks left. I set down the microphone and walked toward the head table where Megan sat frozen in shock. My daughter looked at me with wide eyes, trying to process what had just happened. Dad, she whispered, what have you done? I've given you a wedding gift, sweetheart. The truth. Your mother and her friends were planning to steal your inheritance and disappear. Now they can't. Denise was screaming at Carrie, who was crying and trying to explain herself. Lance was arguing with the repo men, who were explaining that his equipment was no longer his to argue about. The wedding guests were recording everything on their phones, creating a permanent record of the evening's entertainment. In the middle of it all, I felt a strange sense of peace. For months, I'd been the victim, the fool, the man everyone pitied or ignored. Tonight, I was the one in control. I walked to the bar and ordered another whiskey. The bartender, a young woman who'd been watching the drama unfold, poured me a double without being asked. Hell of a speech, she said. Hell of a night, I replied. Behind me, the chaos continued. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the cops, probably to report the disturbance. Denise was still screaming, Carrie was still crying, and Lance was still trying to salvage something from the wreckage of his scam. But none of that mattered anymore. I'd won. Not just the battle, but the war. I'd exposed their lies, protected my assets, and shown everyone in Dunfield exactly who Harold Mitchell really was. I wasn't the limited access guest anymore. I was the man who'd burned down their house of lies and walked away without looking back. The police arrived and began sorting through the chaos. Lance was arrested on outstanding warrants. Apparently, Pete's investigation had uncovered more than just financial fraud. Carrie was led away in handcuffs, her carefully constructed life in ruins. Denise was left standing alone in her expensive dress, surrounded by the wreckage of her reputation. As for me, I finished my whiskey, kissed my daughter goodbye, and walked out into the night air. Tomorrow there would be lawyers and divorce papers and the messy business of rebuilding my life. But tonight, I was free.